When at a ski resort, you'll often be faced with an overwhelming variety of trails that you can take. What is a bull run and why are they so popular? What's a mogul and why do people try to avoid them? Join us as we answer those questions and more as we overview all of the major terrain types you'll encounter when you go skiing. Before we begin, some quick notes about what's to follow. This script is based mostly on experience in mountains in the western United States, and some or many of these types are not available in other places around the world. We'll split this video into 3 primary sections. We'll start with on-piste, then go to off-piste, and wrap up with a pair of bonus types. You'll also often hear about backcountry and other variants like slack country and side country, but those are all out of bounds and aren't within the realm of this video. For the purpose of this video, on-piste refers to any run with defined boundaries. For the most part, these are runs that are cut through trees, but in the high alpine, on-piste is typically defined by a change in the snow quality at the edge of the run. In Europe and some other places with minimal forest, you can find stakes and markers to delineate the edge of on-piste areas. On-piste can be split into 3 different subcategories, so let's start with groomers. A groomer is by far the most popular type of terrain across the world, defined by a slope that is packed and smoothed by a machine. These runs are generally the easiest to ski and are extremely versatile, allowing for learning, carving, and cruising. These runs are typically where you are capable of going the fastest, as the grooming process eliminates most snow obstacles you might face on other terrain types. A machine-groomed run typically also has the most consistent snow of all terrain types, but wouldn't necessarily be the first choice on a powder day. First thing in the morning, you can often find a phenomenon called corduroy on some groomers. This refers to a sequence of ridges left in the snow, which provide the best grip you can typically find on a groomer. Later in the day, popular groomers do have a penchant for becoming rather icy due to their popularity and the fact that they're packed down by a multi-ton snowcat most nights. Groomers, for the most part, are exactly what you think of when you think of your classic tree-cut ski run. One exception is bunny hills, which are typically groomed but are wider than they are tall, such that they often resemble a small off-piste area more so than a traditional groomer. Groomers are popular for a reason, and you'll almost certainly ski them unless you go to an extremely old-school ski area like Mount Bohemia. Somewhat related to groomers are traverses. These have a variety of other names, including catwalk, cat track, road, and so on. Traverses fall into on-piste because they're typically carved into the mountainside to provide a way to navigate from side to side, or to provide a milder alternative to going straight down the face of the hill. Traverses, outside of the exception we'll discuss at the end of the video, are typically groomed as well, so one could make the argument they fit into the groomers category. However, we separate them into a separate category because they're typically significantly less steep and narrower than your traditional groomer, meaning you have to ski them in a different style. Rather than big turns from side to side, on most traverses, you'll just point it straight ahead and make only small movements to control your speed. These are another essential terrain type that you'll ski at almost every mountain. The final major on-piste option you'll have are moguls, often also referred to as bumps. I personally don't like the term bumps because it's ambiguous, so I'm going to stick with moguls here. These are defined runs, and their marquee feature is that they are left completely ungroomed. As a result, over time, as skiers and snowboarders push snow into piles and instinctively ski around those piles, mogul fields form. There's not really a great way to describe it other than just showing you. They're just bumps that you ski between. The areas between the moguls are known as troughs, and can become quite icy if there hasn't been much recent snowfall. Making constant adjustments to go between all of the moguls is quite tiring, so moguls are one of the best places to get some cardio on the mountain. They provide a great quad workout, and while they are difficult to master, practice on moguls unlocks better technique on almost every other terrain type. Moguls are much more common in Western North America than other regions of the globe due to the amount of natural snow typically needed for a well-developed mogul field. Now let's move into the off-piste, which covers almost everything that doesn't fall under one of those previous 3 subcategories. These are all the terrain types that aren't manipulated by machinery, meaning the topography is natural and the snow isn't typically affected by machines. Let's start with general off-piste, which is characterized by wide open areas to go play. This includes bowls, which are wide open areas that curve around, taking the shape of a giant bowl. Bowls often funnel down into gullies, which are exactly what they sound like. There's a huge variety of gullies, and some of the narrowest variants reach into the category of extremes, which we'll talk about in a minute. You can also have what I like to call faces, which are like bowls but don't really curve or funnel, and instead allow you to make a line straight down. The blessing and curse of all 3 types of this general off-piste is exposure. The hallmark of a good off-piste area is lots of open space. This means minimal trees and other obstacles, which leaves less protection from the sun. On powder days, these bowl areas get absolutely swarmed. After just a few days in the sun, however, off-piste can harden so much that it's practically unskiable. General off-piste areas are typically found in the high alpine, although they can exist in areas where wildfires or other natural events have cleared trees. Going right in hand with general off-piste is tree skiing, also known as glades. Something important to note here is that gladed skiing means that the trees have been thinned by the ski area to make a more pleasant tree skiing experience, while true tree skiing just goes through the forest as Mother Nature designed it. However, these terms are often used interchangeably. This type of skiing is a bit like Moguls in that you're constantly turning and adjusting, just to dodge trees instead of bumps. Tree skiing is also relatively unique, for the most part only being found in certain regions of North America and Japan. There's nothing quite like a well-spaced tree run, but they certainly test your reflexes and are a good workout. One advantage trees offer is shade, preserving snow quality and making it much more consistent than general off-piste. If you're capable, taking a tree lap offers a whole different type of skiing than most other types discussed here. The other major off-piste subcategory is extreme terrain, which includes a variety of different features. The most aesthetic of these are chutes and couloirs, which share some similarities and some differences, but are terms typically used interchangeably. These are typically tighter versions of gullies that are defined by some sort of major obstacle on the sides. The most common are rock-lined, but tree-lined chutes exist as well. The defining feature of these is that they're so tight that they require excellent technique to descend safely, as they typically offer only enough room for extremely tight turns or no turns at all. When a chute or couloir isn't wide enough to turn, it requires a technique known as straightlining, which is exactly what it sounds like. This verb has become a noun over time, so the term straightline is used to refer to a chute or couloir so tight you have to straightline down it. Some other major extreme terrain you can find are cliffs and other various drops. Again, these are relatively straightforward, requiring a bit of airtime and some good technique and strength to land properly and ski out. The final two extreme features you can commonly find are cornices and pillows. Cornices are overhanging ledges of snow formed by wind blowing snow up onto a shelf and over the edge where it freezes in place. They commonly require a large drop to get over and are very dangerous when handled wrong. Pillows are soft mounds of snow that build up on top of boulders, stumps, or other small obstacles. These can be extremely fun when the conditions are right, but are otherwise just smaller versions of the drops and cliffs we discussed above. Extreme terrain as a whole is typically some of the least trafficked terrain at a mountain, but is also the most avalanche prone. Extreme terrain is open only on natural snow and typically requires hiking to or from or both. As such, you'll only find true extreme terrain at the biggest mountains, and some notable mountains like Vail and Sun Valley lack true extreme terrain. Extreme terrain varies from everything else on this list in the number of nuances it has. It requires evaluation from the skier on whether the snow conditions are favorable enough to attempt it. It requires a lot of work to find and access. It requires nearly perfect technique every time, and so on. As such, extreme terrain is typically pretty limited, and it's certainly not for everyone. As you've seen, there's plenty of other types of terrain, so don't fret if extremes aren't your cup of tea. I myself do enjoy a day of just cruising Groomers. And finally, we have two exceptional terrain types that don't really fit into either on-piste or off-piste. The first of these is terrain park. This refers to a run that's separate from all the others in order to house a number of artificial features. We certainly are no park skiers, but common park features are jumps, rails, and boxes. This is where you go to do tricks and whatnot. Some skiers and boarders like to hang out in the park almost exclusively, working on crazier and crazier tricks. If you're looking to connect with nature, however, the park isn't where that's going to happen. A slight variation on true terrain parks are adventure zones. Sometimes you'll have a small, family-style park, with the most common of these being a banked slalom. This refers to a narrowish trail with high sides for all of the turns to allow for safe, high-speed skiing. They're a whole lot of fun, even if you're not skiing with kids. Another type of adventure zone is the Kids Adventure Zone, which is typically an easier version of tree skiing, with props and other features set up throughout to give the zone a theme. All of these fall under the park category because they're artificial. They're built with snowcats, or even sometimes by hand. Our final discussion point in this video is what I like to refer to as single-track traverses. These are similar to traverses from before in that they get you from one place to another along a fairly mild slope. However, they differ in just about every other way. They're typically not cut into the hill, but instead are just carved out of the snow over time. They're not groomed and are only wide enough for one or sometimes two people at a time. These are typically found when accessing or exiting off-piste terrain and are rarely very popular. However, they remain a vital link for many other types of terrain, and you'll most likely run into these if you ski any of the aforementioned off-piste categories. Alright, that's all of the major terrain types you'll find at ski resorts. Now go check out our video breaking down all the ways to describe snow, or take a look at one of our insider's guides, which have tips and tricks to help you make the most out of your day at 45 plus of the world's premier ski resorts. As always, please put any questions down below. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, please consider subscribing to help support this stream. Thank you all so much for watching. All my love, I'm out.